I'm a PhD student. I study at Faculty of Social Studies at Brno at Masaryk University in Czech Republic, and I'm also a researcher at interdisciplinary research team on internet and society. So I'm actually doing a doctorate in media studies, but previously I majored in sociology. So during my sociology years, I was focusing on sexual scripts in pornography and the role of women in pornography, and also how women actually perceive pornography, like how they perceive their influence. But during my PhD, I'm focusing on exposure to sexually explicit materials and sexting, and its impact on adolescent well-being.
Wow, wow, that's incredible. Well, first and foremost, then you're probably one of the best people to ask this question to. From your perspective, because you have studied pornography specifically so much, what are some of, in your views, the similarities or differences between camming and traditional porn?
Well, I would say with camming, there's a really good thing about it that the models or performers can actually, script it themselves. They know what they're gonna do and they won't be, pressured, for example, on set, because we know that pornographic industry is not perfect. And I think that camming is like safer option to actually shooting pornography. And also, with pornography, most of the mainstream videos show a very like traditional script where men are the active ones, they get to come, and women don't, they're more passive. And I think with camming, especially since it's women dominated, they can more get into their own narrative and like show what is their fantasy, what they want to do, how they experience pleasure. So I think that is really cool about it.
Yeah, I like how you said it. Like they are the ones controlling the script,
Mm-hmm.
and that is true. So many, I've interviewed so many models, and many of them, that is one of their favorite things about the industry is that a lot of them are really true to themselves in the sense that they're not doing anything that they're not comfortable with and that they don't like.
Mm-hmm.
But that's like the beauty of the world that there's someone for everything. So they still have tons of members that enjoy what they are comfortable with. And if there's a member that wants something else, he can go and find someone else that's comfortable exploring that with him.
Exactly. I think that's really beneficial for these services, because people maybe they have some special desires or fantasies that they're afraid to communicate. But in these spaces, it's actually safe and okay to say, I want to try it and not necessarily go out, into some places where you may be confronted with the fact that you don't actually like it, like experiencing it. Maybe you like to read about it, maybe you like to watch porn, but not really experience it yourself. So I think that camming is also like a safe option for the consumers to actually experience something they want to explore.
Absolutely. Now, I'm curious from your perspective, you said like, it's a safer option for potentially for them to experience something they want to explore. And I have found that that's true in the sense of, sometimes members have a fantasy that they've never felt comfortable enough to share with
Mm-hmm.
a partner. And so they are able to either discuss it or act it out or whatever the case is with a model. And sometimes they realize, yeah, I actually don't like that, or wow, I'm seeing a whole different side of myself. I really like that. And they're able to
Mm-hmm.
learn more about themselves. Do you feel like people are able to learn about themselves in a in that same way by watching porn? Or is this experiential and relationship based platform the way that they would need to go in order to dive deeper and experience it?
Well, I think that the first holds, for my MA level of the final thesis, I was doing online interviews with 80 women. They were filling out questionnaires with open-ended questions, and I was asking them questions, why are you watching porn? What do you get out of it? What do you perceive as the positives? What do you perceive as the negatives? And a lot of them actually said that they learned something new. sometimes it was not so positive, that they also learn some, I don't know, for example, how to deep throat or something that they were, kind of forced to learn because they thought it's normal to do. And like there's nothing wrong with deep throating, but you know what I mean. But also like there were so many positives, like getting inspiration for buying new sex toys and trying them with their partners, and like being also able to like gain the vocabulary, like how to talk about things in a comfortable way. They've seen in pornography how they could talk about things, which I also think it's really like good. So yeah, there's usually just yeah.
So I see. So you feel like sometimes they're able to learn how to communicate sexually by watching.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But also like learning about things they maybe didn't know about, or exploring what they want to do, what they want to try, what they don't want to try, things like that. So in that sense, pornography, I think it's very beneficial. But with camming, as you said, sometimes you just want to explore it without the fear of being judged. And I think that's a really important aspect of it, you to have this space and not necessarily, searching out someone quote unquote real in the real world, because you can do it like from the safety of your home. You don't have to actually reveal yourself, things like that. So I think it's like safer option.
I know you said that you're currently getting your PhD.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, congratulations. That is very, yeah,
Thanks.
I know it's not easy work and it's very impressive. Do you know what your thesis is going to be on or your doctorate?
uh yeah, it's gonna be like a thesis that is from 3 articles. So my first article is already published, and it's on European adolescents and how they feel after they seen some sexually explicit materials. So that's it. It came out in the Archives of Sexual Behavior, the journal, and it's about, I think it's from 9 European countries, and we've been looking how girls and boys actually differ in their reaction. So what I want to explore in my dissertation thesis is how actually sexting and sexually explicit materials affect adolescents, because many times, well, both of these things are often framed as risks, something that's potentially harmful. But not a lot of people actually talk about the fact that it may be beneficial. And it kind of shows with the sexually explicit material, because most of the boys who've seen it were happy to see it. And with girls, it's a bit trickier. It's not like they're not more happy, but they're more neutral from what I've remembered. So there are some gender differences, and I think that it's also like interesting to look into that like deeper, like what's happening. Why are women actually perceiving sexually explicit materials in their adolescence as like worse than boys, like there may be different scripts of play, things like that. So yeah, sex should be pleasurable, and I think there's some kind of missing out if sex is not pleasurable. Like it should not be not pleasurable. But also the importance of consent, that we need to teach kids from young age that it's okay to say no to sex, and it's okay to have boundaries and things that you like. And when we only teach them don't have sex because you're going to be pregnant, and not like navigating how to talk about it, how to enjoy it, that can potentially be really harmful, like further into life.
I know you study, the internet and these digital aspects of communication and sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
What role is that playing? What role is the internet and these like the digital communication playing in our evolution as humans and our connection, human connection?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to watch how it evolves, because around the 90s, or when it all started, people were like, "Oh, something is like sex is happening on the internet. That's only like for some pervs, or like something special. People are not normal who are doing things over the internet." But like look at us now. Internet is so like embedded in everything we do, and you don't think about your connections as something that is online and in real life. It's like intertwined right now. So I would say that social media are and online spaces are really important for maintaining relationships, but also like discovering who we are and safely exploring our sexuality and our interests, you know. And I think it's really important, for example, for queer adolescents, that they need to have someone to identify with. Like, imagine you're living in some small town where everyone is heterosexual and they do not even acknowledge that there may be some different options. And, you know, growing up in such environment is really hard. And the online spaces can provide a safe way to talk with people about what you feel, who you are, to identify with. And there's some studies that actually show that, you know, for example, for gay men, pornography is like a really important component to actually like affirm themselves that they are gay.
Why is that? I'm just curious. Do you know?
um you know, I think it's about exploring your sexuality, like what you see. And sometimes people like don't are not sure if what they feel is real, you know. I, for example, have a friend who's gay, and she told me, you know, I dated some guys and it was not exactly pleasurable, but I thought that all relationships are like that. There's nothing special. But then further in life, when I explored what love may look like, what sex may look like, I actually realized that no, that was not the norm. So this is why it's important to have safe spaces to talk about such things, you know?
It sounds like you really see that the internet plays as it is today. You know, the internet plays a huge role in all of our lives. When you were talking, I was like thinking, what if we didn't have the internet? Like the world would stop. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
There would be, this interview wouldn't be happening. There wouldn't be email. Can you imagine a world without email or social media?
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
These things, funny enough, weren't even around 20, 30 years
yeah.
ago.
Yeah,
But
but it's hard to imagine like going back, like taking the step back, you know?
oh, it's so, I can't. Life would be
Mm.
tough. And also the fact that we have information at our fingertips. We just have a question, we Google it. You know, back in the day,
Mhm.
we had to go to the library. How is the internet benefiting our sexuality?
Well, as you said, even making this possible, I think that's a huge benefit, you know, because we all need people around us. We all want to feel heard and understood and not judged. And especially in sexuality, it's so bizarre that our society is like so sexual, and we see so many ads and things that like people are overtly sexual, but we are actually not able to communicate openly about our sex lives, you know. And even in Czechia, we are like, I think, the least religious country in Europe. People are still, you know, like every time there's a discussion about sex education in schools, some parents are against it. Like, we only should be teaching our kids about sex, not some teachers. Like, there's always some voices against it. So even though we're quite liberal country, you know, so with camming, I think it's really cool even for adults to talk about stuff, you know, because the kids and the Gen Z, that's like one thing. They can Google things and they use social media like our generation never did. But with older people, there's still such a stigma around sex. And like imagining someone who's, for example, disabled or doesn't have a relationship and wants to connect, I think there should be options like this for them to engage in sex or like talk with someone without the fear of being judged.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Um, how do we get there? How do we get to a place where people can explore themselves sexually? And you know, I think the rule of harm none, you know, if you're not harming anyone, I think that's a really great rule. If no one's being hurt, what is the harm in someone looking at porn? If no one's being hurt, what is the harm in someone going to a campsite? Um, how do we get to the point where we're not judging people for their sexuality?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I would say that about like opening the discussion about sexuality, communicating with public, for example, like from a researcher's point of view, not only publishing in journals, but doing things like this that people can actually hear about our research.
What are some of the downsides that you see to camming?
Mm, I think there's the thing with the payouts and models feeling pressure to do stuff. So I'm not actually sure about Jasmine, and I've searched a bit of Reddit to actually look into Jasmine, and people were saying that it's quite fair. But I know about some controversies from other sites. For example, there were like problems with paying models or models feeling pressured to do some things they weren't comfortable with just to gain some money. So when people are being exploited and when they're in a financial distress, I think that this is when camming can get really like hurtful for the performers.
Exactly. That's like, yeah, in every business, there are people who are integral and do it right. And then there are people who are going to try and take advantage and that type of thing. Um, and you're right, being exploited or the girls feeling pressured, the models feeling pressured
Mm.
is probably something that unfortunately is dealt with on other platforms. Yeah.
Yeah, and as you said, like for example, with platform like Jasmine that is only for sex work, I feel like it's better to have some company that has your back and like knowing, okay, this is sex work. We're not trying to, have a platform for content creators and then, like shutting the door when something happens. So I think that this is like the benefit of actually camming somewhere that is a place for sexual content.
I think we just have to get away from this narrative of like everything has to look like this and that's it. If it
Mm-hmm.
looks different, then we're canceling you, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I really like what you said with when no harm is being done, then what's the problem? Everyone's a bit different, so why should it be a problem?
Yeah, exactly. It's what makes life interesting, right?
Yeah.
Well, I like to just end the interview by asking one final question, which is what can we do to create a more sex positive society?
Well, I think that it's down to the practical things as we already discussed. So, making podcasts such as you do, I think that's really helpful. Or talking about research, giving lectures, creating social media accounts that actually inform people about sex. I think that this is how we create a sexually positive society. And also the role of NGOs, like when they talk in media about consent and things like that, a lot of people are actually like, that is something I should think about. So even raising these topics, like I think we're really far from openly discussing people's kinks and fetishes, but even with consent, it's a huge step and an important one.
I agree. I agree. Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been so nice.
Yes, it's been a great interview. We really appreciate you giving us your time today.
Thank you so much for inviting me.